So back in the year 2008, I was completing the Call of Duty World at War campaign, and honestly, I was hooked. Nothing could compare to just committing horrific war atrocities, and even better than that,
Take out those fucking PC bombs!
But once you raise that hammer and sickle flag and the titles begin to fade, you enter a new cutscene of pure confusion. All you hear is the heavy panting of a group of figures approaching you in a sinister fashion, and you begin to realise that whatever you're experiencing is vastly different from the campaign. And right before we get a clear view of the person hurtling themselves towards you, the screen cuts to black, and blood text appears on your screen, reading the title of the mode, Nazi Zombies. Now at the time, this was a massive roll of the dice for both Treyarch and Activision. Nothing like this had been seen before within a Call of Duty mode, despite zombies growing massively in popularity in the late 2000s. However, coming off the back of arguably the greatest Call of Duty ever made, this really could have blown up in Activision's face. However, the faith was shown in Treyarch as a studio, and ultimately, it paid off, and we were blessed with Nacht Der Untoten. Now, for the purposes of this video, I feel we need to take a look at Nacht from an original 2008 perspective, and then also a look back at it from a more modern viewpoint. We'll acknowledge Nacht in its two main varieties, to me at least, which is the iconic World at War classic version and the Black Ops 3 Chronicles version. I know it was also present in Black Ops 1 and the Resurrection DLC, but I don't feel like this offered enough difference to actually warrant much of an inclusion. All it really did was change the box weapons, add Mule Kick and Quick Revive, and it wasn't exactly groundbreaking changes. Anyway, when it comes to World at War Nacht, I think initially you are met with one main feeling as the player.
And that's fear.
When you drop in, you are met with a creepy as fuck laugh, and as an 8-year-old kid at the time, that scared the shit out of me off the bat. There was such an immediate sense of fear dropping into Nacht on that first occasion. Now, this element of fear is something which World at War does better than any other COD Zombies game in my opinion. I do think a large part of it comes down to the lower quality graphics present within World at War at the time. Now, this wasn't really any fault of Treyarch's, but at the time, they obviously didn't have the resources to make this game look as pretty as the rest of the game. But in a way, I feel like this really aided in the unnerving atmosphere and highlighted that sense of unknown. When you look at Nacht itself, it's a decrepit, isolated building seemingly in the middle of nowhere. The walls and roofs are in ruins with cold metal bars and messages of fear scratched into the doors and walls. This only elevates the sense of dread at the situation you find yourself in, and as you look around the initial room, you're aware that what is to come will not be pleasant. I feel the simple addition of a foggy exterior cements this point of isolation to the player, and with the zombies emerging through this, it adds a level of depth to what would otherwise be an incredibly bland environment. The way in which the zombies shamble and slowly pick up the pace as the rounds go by only elevates this atmosphere. Now this horror-fueled tone is only further distilled with the addition of ambient and zombie-like noises constantly approaching the player, without necessarily being visualised. I feel as if this just heightens the sense of panic for the player, because you may never actually see the enemy coming before it's too late. This sense of hopelessness is only further established throughout the specific game mechanics of the mode itself. Now when you spawn into Nacht, you are equipped with an M1911, a knife, and 4 grenades, so there's an immediate sense of, oh shit, I am not equipped to be fighting hordes of undead. And this is only further established by how poor these weapons are in the mode itself. When you combine this with the use of flimsy wooden barricades being your only method of actually keeping the hordes at bay, it's quickly made apparent to the player that there is a true disparity in this situation. It really evokes the feeling that this is a true last stand for the player, and any hope of actually escaping this nightmare is in vain. However, not all hope is immediately lost. As you begin to battle the hordes, you notice points are being accumulated, which can be used to upgrade your arsenal. As you look around, you see the scratched outlines of weaponry, and when you begin using them, you realise that you're taking out zombies way easier than before. I think the use of chalk outlines representing the weaponry is a great use of the technology at the time, actually in the World War II era, but also it matches the simplistic nature that Nacht offers, and they became so iconic that they are within every single zombies map moving forward. And once you start popping heads with the Kar 98K and growing in confidence, you start to think, you might actually be able to survive this onslaught after all. However, this feeling is short-lived, and as you begin to progress through the rounds, you start to notice that this firepower isn't going to be enough. That's when you begin to venture, and begin opening doors around the map, and suddenly, you notice arguably the most iconic element of zombies, the mystery box. Now between this and FIFA packs, I genuinely reckon that this thing probably is the source of most gamers' gambling addictions. But when you first see this thing in game, you are just immediately filled with wonder. Costing 950 points, you begin to see an entire catalogue of weaponry just fly past your eyes, ranging from snipers, SMGs, assault rifles, LMGs, all of which offer a different level of benefit to the player. The element of risk and reward with the mystery box only adds to the intensity of the situation, because the potential detriment of getting a bad gun could ultimately cost the player their life. I really love the element of magic and mysticism this mechanic adds both to the gameplay, but to the larger zombies world and narrative, as this was the very earliest stages of entwining those themes into the mode. As you cycle through your weapons, it soon made apparent what ones will benefit you the most, with heavy LMGs like the Browning and the MG42 being an absolute dream to pick up. However, one thing that the players likely didn't expect to be included was this weird alien looking piece of tech known simply as the ray gun. Now back in World at War, this offers the player the best chance of survival. It is leaps and bounds ahead of all the other weapons available, and once again adds a sense of wonder and mysticism to the mode itself. However, this weapon comes at a cost, that being that if you get too close, it will actually harm you with the splash damage it inflicts and ultimately will kill you, so it's a balancing act of using it when it's viable. However, despite how powerful it is, as the rounds continue to progress, you realise it is essentially an inevitability that the zombies will just overpower you at some point. At this stage, there really is just a realisation of there being zero hope for the player, and this ultimately shifts the main goal of the mode. Where the focus was initially to just survive and actually escape this nightmare, the goal has just changed to survive as many rounds as possible. Now I think this is where one of the most important factors of zombies comes into play, that being the replayability of the mode. Once succumbing to the zombies for the first time and hearing that dreaded laugh at the game over screen, the player is immediately dropped back into the mode on round 1. Taking all the experience of the previous attempts, the player can now use this to experiment in ways to survive for longer periods of time. Whether that's camping up top with an LMG or training the zombies around a certain area of the map, the player now understands the goal of the mode itself and can use that prior knowledge of previous attempts to improve. There's something addicting about trying to hold out as long as possible with the odds stacked against you. It's that classic underdog story that everybody wants to be a part of. Now Nacht is a particularly small map, so learning it is pretty simple, particularly with its limited features, but for a 2008 audience, this was a brilliant first impression to the mode, and provided a great platform to build off throughout the World at War DLCs. It truly is an iconic map, actually reoccurring in various COD titles, I believe 10 times in total, and none have been executed anywhere near as well as the success of the original. However, I do feel like the only other one of any note is Zombies Chronicles. So Nacht and Zombies Chronicles on Black Ops 3 was one of the many classic maps brought into the game, and much like the case with all the other World at War maps, the player now had access to way more features on the map than ever before. As we know, Black Ops 3 Gobblegums are, quite frankly, overpowered as shit, allowing the player to pack a punch, add AATs, have all the perks, all core fundamentals of zombies now, however, never previously accessible within this map. Now to me, I think that this is brilliant. It offers significantly more replay value, enabling the player to go to way higher rounds and spend way more time in the mode itself. However, I can understand both sides of it. I do feel as if this can take away from what Nacht at its core is meant to be and represent. As a map, Nacht is meant to be a simplistic introduction into the zombies mode, with a feeling of hopelessness and fear. Having access to all these features via Gobblegums, whilst really fun, strips away any of the original tones and themes designed for the map itself. Either way, I'm really happy that we have access to play the map both ways across different games. However, if I had to make a choice, World at War is the way to play Nacht for me. But despite how good Nacht is, it did also come with a few negatives at the time. Now, it's very easy to sort of overlook these because at the end of the day, it was the first map, the first time they'd even created the mode itself, so criticising a map that much on these I think is a bit harsh. However, they were still present in the game and could affect the gameplay. So, the first thing that you notice, and this is just a trend with World at War itself, it's very easy to train zombies once you figure out how to do it. Essentially, if the player is constantly moving, you will never get hit by the zombie, so as long as you always have the space to physically move somewhere in the map, you're going to be absolutely fine. Alongside this, there was also a 24 max zombie cap each round, so you knew that you were never going to get absolutely fully swarmed. It's not as if Nacht was going to be literally full to the brim of zombies. You knew that there was always going to be an actual capacity on the mode itself, so once you'd taken them out, you knew you were going to be absolutely fine. It meant that you could easily recycle through ammo and get more ammos coming through in the different rounds. And speaking of the ammo side of things, you also had the infinite ammo flamethrower present within World at War. Now don't get me wrong, it wasn't exactly the most powerful of weapons, but as is in earlier World at War style zombies maps, there was a lot of glitch spots, which meant that the player could physically get behind invisible walls and just be invulnerable. So if you have an infinite ammo weapon and you're stuck behind a wall invulnerable, you can just get to an infinite round basically until you're bored. That does take away from a lot of the whole core point of the mode itself, which is to be survival and try and live as long as you can, not be a god and hide behind an invisible wall with a flamethrower. However, I think it's a little bit harsh to critique the mode on this, as it was the first iteration of zombies we ever got. So how do we rank a map like Nacht Der Untoten? To me, I think there's a perfect way of analysing it. Nacht Der Untoten is not by any means the best map or a perfect map, but I feel it is the perfect encapsulation of what zombies at its core should be. When you look at it subjectively, Nacht Der Untoten was a revolutionary gaming experience, which hooked players enough to start a staple element of Call of Duty. One of those elements that, realistically, a lot of people buy the entire game for. I feel it was an incredibly impressive reuse of assets. You've got to remember that Nacht itself is present within zombies, but it's also in the campaign, and it's in the multiplayer map. However, you never feel as if it's the reusing of the same asset each time. That's where the tone of Nacht comes in and plays such a huge role in why it's such a good map. Does it still hold up today with the likes of Black Ops 6 from a mechanical standpoint? Definitely not. World at War as a game itself is rather clunky and it has got significantly less features. However, that's to be expected. But the atmosphere itself is still incredible, and looking at it from a modern perspective, it still truly offers an enjoyable gameplay experience to this day. Are you going to go back and play it for 5 hours on repeat like you could with a map say like Der Eisendrache or Origins, Mob of the Dead? No, of course not, but you're not meant to. And that's the beauty of Nacht. The thing was designed as a simple little mode to potentially intrigue players at the end of the Call of Duty campaign, and it grew and blossomed into something that was truly spectacular. Ultimately, Nacht was the perfect level of difficulty and challenge and complexity that was required for the player at that moment in time, and truly needs to be acknowledged as one of the best simple ways of playing the mode. If I had to rank it, I would probably give Nacht a high C or a low B on the tier list, because when you look at it across the whole range of zombies, there's obviously so little in there, but when you contextualize it and look at it as it was when it released, it provided so much to the player and ultimately was the building block for every other experience that we've had. But more importantly, what do you guys think? Where is Nacht placed within your rankings? Do you think it's as good as I do? Do you think it's a little bit rubbish from a more modern viewpoint? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments below, and if you are new here and you haven't already, please do consider subscribing, as it means the absolute world. Let me know if you do want to see more zombies retrospectives in the future. I would like to make this a series where we go through map by map and sort of explain what's good, what's bad, why zombies is in the state that it's in today, and everything else in between. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in another video sometime soon.